Commissioner Pahana?
Here.
Let the record show that Vice Chair Walker has an excused absence. Chair Krushat?
Here. Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand on the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going to the city website and clicking on the meeting agendas link. Now for public comments. This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on this agenda. All comments are to be directed to the Chair of the Commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out name and address slips and give them to the Planning Commission Secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act, state law, from taking action or discussing at length items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item on the agenda. Do I have any slips?
Where would we fill that out? I'm sorry, I'm just realizing this. Thank you very much.
Do you have something for public comments, or are you doing an agenda item?
It's not on your list, as far as I understand.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and address it, and then you can fill out the slate afterwards. Okay.
Hi, I'm Richard Card. I live here in 29 Palms, and I'm interested in the Planning Commission's approach to conditional use permits in regards to campgrounds and alt structures. The county has a path towards the development of creative and unique structures on campgrounds and things of that nature, but we don't have one in our development code, as far as I can tell. So I guess if there's any questions about that question, I can further clarify. So.
Well, I think what we're doing right now is what you're seeing is a process that we're going through the entire development code.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we'll address, is those areas where we do have maybe we don't have the definitions that we need. And I think we'll be approaching that. I'll let Keith answer that if he wants.
So
We can't discuss this at length, though.
no, we can't. But campgrounds.
3 minutes, right?
Yeah. So campgrounds are on the agenda for later on in the.
I
on this
apologize, I
meeting.
didn't see that.
No, that's fine. I would suggest you go ahead and bring that up at that time,
Great.
and then we can have a more full discussion.
Perfect, thank
Okay.
you very much.
And not violate. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Anyone else? Okay, then I will close public comments. And I will go to the commission, comments and reports from our members. Let's start at this end.
Hi, I went to the city council meeting last week, and I watched is it not on? Or it needs to be closer. I attended the city council meeting last week, and I watched last night's special meeting, and just kind of been watching more of the meetings and getting caught up since I'm new, and so I feel a little more clear on what's happening.
Thank you. Leslie?
I have not attended any meetings since our last.
Okay. I have not attended any meeting since our last meeting either. Mr. Grant?
I attended last week's City Planning Commission and yesterday's, city council meeting and yesterday's council meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to the consent calendar. The first item is we have approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 29th, 2023. Do I have any comments, any additions, any changes?
I
Everybody is
motion
up.
we accept the minutes as written.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay,
I
thank
second the motion there.
Commissioner Cure?
Hi.
Commissioner Garcia? Commissioner Pahana?
Aye.
Chair Krushat?
Aye.
Approved?
No items to remove from the consent calendar for discussion. I will go on to public hearings with our first item will be the equity and social justice element, and I'll turn it over to staff. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this equity and social justice element is a new mandatory element that the state is making local jurisdictions analyze this particular issue, and it will be part of the general plan. We have John Christ, who's our planning consultant on this particular project, and he will be giving the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to John.
Testing, 1, 2.
You wanna sit here, or you want me to just tell me when to go?
Can they hear me in the back of the house, I guess? Yeah. Good evening. John Chris, Terra Nova Planning and Research, 42635 Melanie Place in Palm Desert. We've been working with city staff and with a city-appointed general plan advisory committee for about a year and a half on this project. As you probably know, the project's really started with the adoption of a city council ordinance in October of '21, and in response to the social justice outrages that we've been seeing all over, and especially during the early part of COVID, including the murder of George Floyd. The council adopted a very strong ordinance, or rather a resolution and statement with regard to racism, xenophobia, and hatred. And as an extension of that effort, they directed the preparation of a appropriate element of the general plan that implements not only environmental justice, but equity and social justice. And we started that, I guess it was in the spring of last year.
Oh, and before we get too far down the road, we did pass out a corrected version of the social justice element. The version that was uploaded to our website had some corrections and notations on there, but nothing of substance was edited or changed. So it's basically the same document.
That's right, thank you. We had 5 or 6 GPAC members. Most of them showed up pretty regularly. That was Mariana Wright Mills, Gary Horn, Lashara Maya, Corinna Cole, and Jonas Childs. We also had Jamie Garcia, and Jamie did not attend any of our meetings. We were implementing, a requirement now of state law for a environmental justice element, and the focus is on disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged populations, those that are most victimized by inequity and social injustice. And the state had drafted guidelines on what kind of information needed to be in your element, what kind of issue areas needed to be addressed, and provided recommendations and direction on goals, policies, and programs, which are, as you know, in your general plan, you have a whole series of those on an element-by-element basis. We discovered we don't have in the community a disadvantaged community in the city limits. We do though have disadvantaged unincorporated communities, very small pockets, small population, mostly identified as disadvantaged because of low-income households. But when we started talking about this with city staff, staff definitely wanted to have a broader perspective on environmental justice and social justice, and so and the state also supported that. So you'll see in the element focus areas on things like healthcare and transportation, housing, education, and all these different areas where kind of the business end of life occurs, and where if there's an injustice is felt most keenly. And we were going to, I think what we can do, you have the staff report, it pretty quickly summarizes the process we went through, and also identified the issues, the many issues that were brought up during the workshops and our GPAC meetings by members of the community, and some agencies as well. So perhaps we could just run through real quickly. We've got some of the issue areas that are meant to be focused upon were environmental health and safety, if you will, pollution, water quality, air quality, community safety, et cetera. In fact, can you just hand me that, Keith, and I'll just go ahead and not have to bug you on notes. With just a simple click on the left here.
And just roll up. You can roll it.
Okay. So this slide is showing the areas that we've tried to cover. So we did a lot of research, demographic research, socioeconomic data, spoke with and mined documents from the Morongo Basin's Unified School District, Copper Mountain, the bus line, the park service, you name it, and we've looked into what they had to in the way of programs and how they address the social equity issues. The county is unusual given its size and some of the aspects of it, but it's one of the things I felt most interesting is how 3 out of 4 people countywide live within a half a mile of a park, and or a mile of a park. And that was probably one of the most encouraging findings of that countywide data. You can see here this slide just showing population trends, how steadily we have been growing compared to the SCAG region as well. We pretty much have been following the SCAG region. The ethnic makeup of the community was something that's again in the element, and you see the discussion there. Age distribution as well. Median household income is pretty low in the community comparatively. We have California, then the county, and ours is I believe it was 2020 was about $42,000, $43,000 median household income. These are poverty numbers against which you determine whether what part of the community may be in poverty. You can see that between 2017 and 2019 period, approximately almost 20% of the community population was in poverty, and that's high compared to the county and to the state especially. One of the tools the city has developed, the county has, excuse me, I am fighting a terrible cold, so actually I'm fighting the dust. We have enough dust to cover the pyramids in Egypt with. The state EPA developed a very large database and a whole series of criteria to use to measure the level of disadvantage or potential injustice that on a census tract level, 21 different categories were analyzed. And generally speaking, when you aggregate all of them, if you exceed a number of 75%, that means that you're not doing well. And you've got enough different types of disadvantages that you need to pay attention to what they are and what population is being affected. And I'm going to just quickly run through some of these. This is the summary of the regional data. You can see that we're in the green and the yellow, and that is a pretty good place to be. And we can provide you with a copy of this PowerPoint if you like. They had six tracks that we collected data on, and for under the health areas, it was things like ozone, drinking water, lead, cleanup of hazardous and toxic sites, groundwater, and then solid waste. And again, this is another score of ozone. You can see that we're in an area, we don't rank well in ozone. The high desert and also the Coachella Valley are in a high ozone area. In fact, the Coachella Valley just got downgraded further to extreme for ozone. So we may not contribute to ozone in our community much, but we are getting it coming into the Morongo Basin from the west. Drinking water, the numbering here is not too bad, but we have some pockets of contaminated water. Some of these are associated with the base and maybe one or two with landfills. Risk of children being exposed to lead, pernicious element that really causes terrible things in intellectual development and other child development issues. Threats to groundwater, again, we're looking at the things primarily associated with the base and I believe a landfill facility in the south end, abandoned in the south end of the city.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a question that we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know, and I know better than that.
Sorry, they're recording back there, so I got.
Okay. All right. How's that? Testing 1, 2. All right. All right. You bet. Some of the other areas that we measured are low birth weight, cardiovascular health of the city's population, educational attainment, rates of poverty, unemployment, and housing burden. Do we pay too much for rental housing or too much to own? And probably of all of these, the one that is most consistently bad news is under cardiovascular conditions. You'll see that we're in the 90 percentile, some right at the very top of it, for 99% in some tracks. We have poor cardiovascular health in 29 Palms, and it's something definitely that needs to be focused on.
Is that largely due to the age? Got a lot of retirees? Is that, I mean, what went into that? Access to health?
That's a good question.
Tax per 100,000? What?
The cardiovascular, well, I don't know actually to tell you precisely how the state has measured cardiovascular conditions, but it could be a function of population in the tract that is reported to have cardiovascular disease, and there are probably other measures as well that the state's been able to tap into. Clearly, though, we have a high incidence of cardiovascular disease with our city population, according to the state EnviroScreen data. Solid waste is and some of these numbers are a little odd and not to be taken literally, because the census tract on the right is a very large census tract. So we've got, some facilities that are kind of prejudicing the entire census tract. Threats to groundwater, we talked a little bit about that. Let's see, where are we? Again, the cardiovascular disease, you see that we're pretty badly blanketed here with regard to those conditions. And underlying health issues to your question, Mr. Chairman, diet, access to healthy food, level of physical activity, smoking, exposure to air pollution. I'll tell you though, when you look at a population, it's hard to tell that you have these kinds of conditions where you can have a 40-something-year-old that's clearly suffering from cardiovascular disease, but only the doctors can tell by looking. Anyhow, that's a real issue, which then becomes indicative for so many of the stressors that contribute to cardiovascular disease. So it's not such a separate element, but has to do maybe with access to open space and recreation facilities, programs that promote diets that are low in fats and high in vegetables and grains, and the Mediterranean diet sort of approach. So there are but there's an alarm bell going off here that warrants more attention on the part of, I guess, any of the agencies that can help to address these issues. Low birth weight, it's not great, but it's not is not that bad either in terms of overall ranking of. So these data, access to health insurance, recreational facilities, poverty percent of people in poverty. In the overall, we are ranking fairly well in terms of environmental health, but we have these pockets of areas that definitely need attention. One of the other areas we identified as a big challenge is education. The performance at the Morongo Unified School District is with regard to student behavior, suspensions, I guess feelings of alienation by some of the population, that they're not represented in the school by the school administration or in school teachers, et cetera, was an issue that was raised consistently by folks in our workshops. And you can see here that we do perform very well with regard to our population that has graduated from high school, but we're near the bottom in terms of citizens with an education of a bachelor's degree or greater. So we took all these data and reviewed them and summarized them in the element. And then we went to start looking at the specific areas that the state asked us to visit and consider. And one that came up consistently in our meetings with everyone is food access. And part of the problem is that we're a small market relatively. We are separate from any other market, like a larger town of Yucca Valley or whatever, where you have the scale to support a Walmart or larger outlets. But I do notice that we have a grocery outlet on the west side and also a Ralph's. And I think we had another one just, I'm sorry?
Stater Brothers.
Stater Brothers, I'm sorry. And then I recall that we talked about another one coming in downtown or in
There's $2 generals.
$2 Generals.
Not a $2 general, but $2 general. Two stores named
Dollar General.
Well, the $1 General has become Dollar General Market, and they
Right.
completely changed their outlay, so they're more of a market.
And are they providing food as part of their,
Yeah,
yeah?
that's why they went.
I see.
So they do have like fresh vegetables.
Good.
Not the best quality as they, but they are moving in that direction.
Well, one of the things that I'm in all of these that is really important is to be proactive, and so the element speaks to that, and not only the shopping public, but the city can certainly take an active role, and we try to lay out some of the programs that they can do to encourage the stores to provide better product, better produce, et cetera, and less junk food if they can. But as you know, the obesity crisis in this country is amazing and is just indicative of the issues we have in that regard. We have also looked at things like median household value, et cetera. It's an affordable community to live. The housing cost burden is not especially high. Excuse me. We also looked at employment, rates of employment, types of jobs that are available. And once again, there are many benefits in living in a rural community, but there are also some disadvantages that come with that in our isolation. And require some of us to travel substantial distances to our jobs. I think the element mentions the Coachella Valley, but I spoke with many people who have worked in Riverside and San Bernardino and traveled there every day to work. Again, one of the most important considerations is education. There's a direct correlation between the level of education of your population and median household incomes. So we encourage a lot more work with the school district and with the Copper Mountain to try to raise our education scores. We have tons of open space opportunities and good parks and those sorts of facilities. So there's opportunity, I think, of just matter of making people more aware, and then also promoting the events, various events that can be part of healthy recreation. Let's see, I think, is that it? Are we done? No.
So that chart was saying that there's only 4.8% of the population is without health insurance?
Yes. And that's, let's see, that's correct. And down substantially from a few years ago. And, you know, one of the things that some of that had to do with access through what the Affordable Care Act. We have a high military retirement population, which has federal insurance.
And they have TRICARE, yeah.
Yes, so that, we're very lucky in that respect, because that number is very good comparatively for us. Pretty average with regard to the level of population with disabilities. So these data really became the indicators of what we were needing to focus on in the element. And so we categorically developed policies, goals, policies, and programs that were responsive to the data, and also seemed to map out what we could do to promote, address the challenges we have. One of the most fascinating parts of this was with the GPAC and the community at large, was that the community feels, I think, and we even say as much, that this is an equitable community, and that the levels of racism and xenophobia and just social distress is much lower here than it is in larger urban centers. And it's not really surprising when you think about it, because you tend to know your neighbors. The parents know the kids, and if you get out of line, then they're contacting your parents and letting you know. But by the same token, it's just there's a better, stronger sense of community here. And I don't think everybody kind of realized that we're doing a lot of looking for bad things. And the members of the GPAC finally came around and said, you know, we don't have such a bad community after all when you compare it to so many others, and the things that have to be considered in that regard. So we completed the draft. We circulated it with the staff and with the GPAC members, and then prodded them. You know, we just didn't let them be passive. We kept bugging them about, well, what do you think of this, and what do you think of that? And so it got the final refined version. And then the only change that occurred in the final version was, I think it was Gary Horn asked, and I'm not quite sure my memory is correct, but on page 22 of the element, there's a policy 2-4, and it's actually a very good idea. This was recommended as a policy or something like this. So we drafted the policy in the program, having to do with diversity training, and so that city officials get the opportunity to have the benefit of diversity training, And I know we spoke with staff about this. There are already many programs that the employees either have access to or actually reviewing that have to do with not only things of social equity and social justice, but just administration of government and good governance. So that policy 2-4 and program 2.4A are the only additions to the element that from what we all reviewed in the spring. So that so there are things for the city to do. There are certainly some these and so far neither Frank nor Keith have screamed at me particularly loudly about you're burdening us with all this extra stuff, and it's also very much consistent with what other communities have been doing to try to address these issues of affordability, access to housing, our healthcare crisis, etc. And finally, this is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, but this is an administrative or a ministerial action, adoption of this element into the general plan, and doesn't result in any kind of environmental effect, directly at least. And so a draft exemption to CEQA is, I think you provided that to them, or
We typically don't do that for the planning commission. We
Yeah.
definitely do that for
okay.
the city
It's a
council.
simple one-page document that references the relevant code that rationalizes why we don't have to go through a full CEQA process and that the project is exempt. And so what we're asking for you tonight is to make a recommendation to the city council with regard to the adoption of a CEQA exemption and the approval or the adoption of the general plan element and its incorporation into the general plan. That was a lot longer than I intended to speak. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. Do anybody on the commission have questions for staff concerning?
I have some questions. On page 23, when you talk about Program 3D, the city shall evolve and administer the short-term vacation rental market responsive to community input and decision-making. I know that the city has gone through it with short-term rental or vacation rentals. What is that suggestion meaning?
I'm sorry, which
This one right here.
program are we looking at? 3D? Well, there was a lot of comment about, concern about the neighborhoods being perhaps undermined by the short-term rental market.
Yeah.
So we did not want to take a position, and we got the impression that this could be an important economic development component of the town. So essentially, this is saying that community input needs to be considered when these licenses, or however it's being processed or being approved, and is really kind of like, let's all be sensitive to this issue because it has real effects on the residential neighborhoods where some of these occur.
Yeah, and we periodically go through the vacation rental ordinance. It's always been the hot topic, so.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, a huge concern starting from the beginning. That's why it was limited to a certain amount to prevent this kind of feeling or getting worse. So I guess we could still meet about it again. And I guess that kind of goes with policy 3-4, where it continues to talk about the short-term market rental and how that is impacting our community. But I felt like we do our best to try to stay ahead of that. So I guess in approving something like this, I'm just curious, is this just meaning like furthering that discussion that we've hashed several times?
I think that's really what we're trying to do, is kind of recognize that it's been an issue for the community. also that it's kind of a new matter, you know, and it really came out as a big deal when COVID struck. A lot of people used this as a way of escaping. We had urban flight, in fact, occurring, and going to, I want to rent, up to 29 Palms and hang out by the park for the next 6 months. And so, and it also has developed its own economic constituency. Now there are investors who are buying single-family homes for purposes of short-term rental, and it's not that there's anything inherently inappropriate with the idea, but some of the short-term rental folks, renters, thought that we were all on vacation, and so they would have the music cranked up, and they would result in some what we call land use compatibility questions, but mostly it's turned out to be a handful of apples kind of spoiling the barrel, and we didn't want to kill the thing, because we saw that this in 29 Palms, this could be a really valuable extension of your hospitality industry, in a sense.
So being genuine to the sensitivity, it just means furthering that discussion,
Yes.
because we've taken a lot of steps, and then we've added a hotline, and I feel that we've made tremendous efforts towards that, but this particularly just means furthering those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would put in there the periodic review of the VHRs like we're doing now, I think meets that objective as well.
Well, the thing about it is being quite involved in that, and the noise complaints really weren't there. And we had more issues with long-term rentals than we ever had with short-term rentals. And I don't know where we are now. I don't even know if we have a waiting list, do we?
No.
Yeah, exactly. And then the economic forces came in and said, like you said, right after COVID, it boomed up, and then it leveled out.
We have seen a
Yeah.
steady but continual drop
Yep.
in vacation home
Oh,
rental
I
permits.
see more homes around me that drop and revert to long-term rental, and a lot of homes. So I don't know. There was a lot. It was a contentious issue for a while.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
And I think it's good that we at least address it. Yeah.
And just keep it,
Yeah.
you had those issues raised, and in the future, you're now sensitized to dealing with those, as if we have an expansion once again of that sort of rental market.
And I have another question, continuing on page 25, policy 5C. There's no responsible party listed. Is there a suggestion?
5B?
C, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of sticking our foot in the school district's business. But we had so many people comment on this, and they felt that they were not getting the school district's attention. And-
that's not school district, that's the college.
I'm sorry?
The college.
Yeah, this is
Oh, I'm
regards
sorry,
to
regarding Copper Mountain?
Yeah, 5 Charlie, to seek opportunities to partner with Copper Mountain College to offer early childhood educational training and accreditation for residents interested in operating
Yes, I'm sorry.
childcare
The,
facilities.
we had several advocates for those programs that are at Copper Mountain. A really significant need for this kind of program, not only to address the families that have this need, but also to have more professionals, properly trained professionals that can address and provide these kinds of services. And the lack of that has been a real hindrance for a lot of folks trying to struggle to get out of poverty. And
Mhm. So to create ownership in this document, who's the responsible party suggested?
yes.
Who?
Oh, who is a responsible party?
It doesn't have one listed.
Just so there's something.
I'd say it's going to take leadership from the top. So I'd suggest it's going to be City Council that is going to provide some direction. And the idea has been, and it was been recommended, is that our agencies don't talk to each other enough, and that we can be proactive. It may not be our legal authority and our bailiwick, but that's the last thing you want to have to rely on. And so the city's in a good position to serve as an advocate for those sorts of things.
Got it. So we would just request that change penciled in to have city council?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it for now.
Okay. Ms. Cure, did you have any questions?
I don't think so. I think it's more of this integration in the city council and planning. I feel like a lot of these things overlap with the housing and homeless, and that we could use this as a good template for some of those agenda items.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And as we've discussed in the Housing and Homeless Committee, it's really easy to talk about big nebulous things, but drilling down as to what the city in its capacity can do in the city can be quite the challenge. We are limited staff. We don't have authority over the sheriff or the school district or the college, but it's a matter of coordination and
Yeah,
that
and
sort of thing.
I think in like the health sense of it, when you get more community building activities, and the community kind of takes that over, and then inherently there's less people that need to manage that. So I think finding ways to build up the programs where the community takes more ownership in it would be helpful.
Agree.
Okay. Mr. Garcia, anything?
No, I think a lot of the things that are on here we already kind of
Yeah.
do in a lot of different ways, at least what I've noticed. So, which is kind of cool. So.
Yeah. The only thing I would, it's always good to make a point of our commitment to equity and social justice. Now, I'm also looking at this. This is required by state law, by
Yes.
Senate Bill 1000, and which is one reason why we're putting it in. The only comment I have, things like food insecurity, education, access to health. I noticed when I was reading through it, it was always 29 Palms is in an isolated area.
Yes.
And our next sign as you go east is no services for 100 miles.
Yes.
And I know that we're kind of stuck out here. And I don't know if, I think the commitment to it, identifying it is great. I think that there was a lot of work put into this document, and that's fantastic. I enjoyed reading it. I didn't know if I would. And then I went through it and I said, man, there's great information in here. So thank you very much. If there's no more questions from the commission, I was going to head and open up to public comment. Anybody like to public comment? All right, I will now close public comment. Bring it back. Any further questions,
No, sir.
comments?
I think it's a great guiding document to help us focus our goals when we're considering each and every aspect of the categories pretty much going forward. But in that, I would like to go ahead and motion that we, I remember you saying that it's CEQA exempt. So a motion that we forward this to City Council, CEQA exempt, with the addition to policy 5C, that in responsible parties, we add City Council.
City Council.
Okay. And I'll second that we adopt the equity and social justice element to the general plan. Is it that may be considered exempt from CEQA?
Yes.
It is considered exempt.
Yes.
Okay, so it is considered exempt from CETA. So I second Ms. Pahana's motion.
Commissioner Cure?
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia?
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana?
Aye.
Chair Khrushchev?
Aye.
Approved?
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to the next item, Joshua trees. This one looked pretty easy.
Yeah, this is pretty easy here. Well, I shouldn't say, I never want to say that, but
Yeah.
it's brief, put it that way.
Yes,
It's very brief.
Okay.
So the purpose of why we're doing this is the state has made their determination on Joshua trees and also made a determination that it gives local jurisdictions the choice as to whether to administer permits for the taking or harming or whatever of Joshua trees, or to defer to the state. We have, some of our staff has experience in Yucca Valley where they had to do that on a daily basis, multiple times. And we are recommending that we don't handle that, if there is an issue with the Joshua tree, that we refer the potential applicant to the state. And we're putting that in the development code, so it's perfectly clear. So, with that, we recommend that you find this development code amendment exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward a recommendation to the city for adoption of the development code amendment.
Do I have any questions from the commission for staff?
I do. Keith, if they happen to call the city, we're just referencing where to call and who to contact and who's the proper,
Yes.
and timeframes, expectations, just so that, I know it's the state, so.
It's the state, so I can't make any firm commitments.
Yeah, not asking for like a commitment, but just that, I guess whatever that pressing issue, or if you have neighbors or people complaining, that it's just like letting them know that it's a process to deal with.
Right, we can certainly, just knowing the state, it could take, a month or so at least to get some of these permits through. The good news, if there is good news, there's not a lot of Joshua trees in the city. It's mostly in the far western part of the city. And the more developed parts of the city, there's hardly any. So we don't anticipate this to be a large issue for us. But wherever it does occur, we would refer them to the state, and we can be honest with them, it could take a month or more to get the requisite permit.
Okay, and they're still subject to all those fines, should they be doing it on their own manner?
Yes, and that's the main reason why we wanted to push this off to the state as opposed to us taking the administration of this over, because we don't want to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Long story short. It's, and Yucca Valley, our neighbors and friends over in town of Yucca Valley has been dealing with this for a while, and they've struggled with it, so.
Any more questions from commission?
No.
If not, then I'm going to open it to public comment. Let me do a good one. Anybody who cares to make public comment? I will now close comments and bring it back to the commission. Do I have a motion?
I see the screen.
Oh,
Want a
sure,
motion?
sorry. This one?
Yeah. Okay, I'll make a motion that
I
the
got ahead of
planning,
you, I'm sorry.
no problem. That the planning commission find the project exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward a recommendation to the city for the adoption of the development code amendment for the Joshua trees.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Kier,
Aye?
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Palahana,
Aye.
and Chair Kruschat.
Aye.
4-0 approved.
Okay. Next item is the non-conforming building lots and uses. And I will send it to staff.
All right, so this particular development code amendment introduces some cleanup, what we consider cleanup language. The commission's free to disagree, but it clarifies and modifies language as to reestablishment of nonconforming use and adding language for legally established lots that are now not compliant with the development code. There's a lot of those, especially in the more rural areas where prior surveys and subdivisions divided the land, and then we impose a zone on them that they don't meet. So we are recommending that with this cleanup language of the Planning Commission, again, find this development code amendment exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward the recommendation to the city for adoption. And I have the code up here if the commission would like to look at it.
I hope everybody had a chance to read through it. It was a lot of information to get through. So the question I have, I'm sorry, I'll go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, okay.
Yeah, you might ask the same one.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a non-conforming lot?
I
I understand a non-conforming building, because if that, and I read through that, and I was a little unclear on what would be a non-conforming lot.
And that is a very fair question. I will graphically show you an example if I
Okay,
can bring up
thank you.
Nobel. I'm just picking out one area of the city. This is not a prejudgment of anything. This is just
Okay.
get rid of that. For instance, you see a lot of these types of
Yeah, they're kind
lots
of irregular.
that are irregular.
Uh-huh.
They don't have public access,
Oh,
you know.
You'd have
And-
to have like easements.
You'd have to have easements, and some of them are
okay.
and some of them are smaller than what the zoning calls for. So, for instance, these are all supposed to be 5-acre lots.
Rural living 5, yeah.
But these may not be 5-acre. I'm just picking out these
Yeah.
as an example. So if that's, and that it's not entirely uncommon. And in these more rural parts of town, it's actually quite common where you see, if we were to pick out some of these, that's a 1-acre lot,
Uh-huh.
but we zoned it for 2.5 acres.
I gotcha.
So it's not necessarily their fault. It's just what it is.
So let me ask you this question, because this brings up, so suppose somebody wanted to develop that piece of property. It's 1 acre, it's in rural living. We have a requirement now that if you were to put in a home, you have to have at least 2.5 acres to put in a septic system. Is that correct? So they could never do that with that 1-acre lot. Or are we saying because it was already pre-surveyed, they could do it?
Okay.
The latter.
That's correct. Okay, so with the 2.5 acres, it's subdivisions going down to 2.5 acres
Right.
need enhanced treatment, and anything else below 2.5. So if someone were to develop a subdivision where they went below 2.5 acres, they would have to immediately come in and show us the enhanced treatment septic system.
Okay.
And in situations like this, where you have a 1-acre lot, someone wants to build a house, you're looking at the same situation.
Okay.
And the approval of these types of septic systems when you have this small of a lot goes up to the state, because it goes to the state water board.
Okay. So they would
So-
still have to run that track through, right?
We still have to run that track through. And again, just as an example, here's its neighbor right here. Not to pick on June Smith, but 3.7 acres, they can go in with their septic system, which is approved by our building and safety.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Fair enough?
Anybody has any questions for staff?
If you could go back to the code. So regarding buildings, legally established, meaning that they are code, like building code and safety established, or,
Okay, so sometimes what happens is something is built per the code
at the time?
Codes change, zone changes, things like that. So something that, an example of that would be the one we're all familiar with is the Keogh storage. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, so that is, the downtown specific plan does not allow storage now, but it was established when it was legal, or when it was permitted. So if they wanted to do some sort of I'm just picking on them, if they wanted to do some sort of expansion of the building or the use or something, then they would have to follow this process. That would be an existing legal non-conforming use.
Okay, so to be clear on it, if you have something that's existing already,
That was legally established.
yes, is legally established, already had the permit, everything, whatever it was,
Whatever it was,
and you don't do anything to it, it's fine.
that's correct.
But if you wanna do anything additional, then you're going to have to, everything that's already exists is now subject to the new.
Would be subject to this new process, and in general, you're coming back to the planning commission.
Okay.
I don't, do you have a question? Go ahead. Oh, okay. Because I want to build on that question, so I remember reading through this, there was a question about, you had a non-conforming building, which meant that it was just non-conforming today, it was conforming when it was built. Act of God destroys it, somebody wants to rebuild it. If they wanted to build it like it was, they had 6 months, or what was the read that I,
The act of
can you
God
go to that
is in there,
section? I
yeah.
forget where that was.
They have 1 year. to
They have
begin-
1
they
year.
have 1 year to begin construction.
And in that 1 year, they could build it back to what the old code was, or?
Yes, to what was previously existing.
Oh, to what was previously existing. So if they built
Yes.
exactly the same structure that they had before, they were good.
Correct,
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So an
thank you.
act of God could destroy 1993 steep stairs, whatever it was, just for example, and with building code standards today, they could build it to that previous standard? Is that what I just heard?
As long as it looks and acts like it did before. So in other words, if you have the McDonald's that got destroyed for a fire and they wanna build an apartment building on it that looked like the old building, you can't do that. Okay, it'd have to be another McDonald's that replaced the McDonald's.
Okay.
Do I have any more questions from the commission? Then I'll go ahead and open this to public comment. If anybody cares to make a comment concerning, and I will close public comments. All right. Everybody said, do I have a motion or, excuse me, do I have a motion and a second? Then I will make a motion that we accept the amendment to the Development Code, Chapter 19-142, Nonconforming Buildings. And it's also exempt from CEQA. Okay. The Planning Commission find the project exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward the recommendation to the city. Well, I wrote down all my notes. I got the code chapter right? Come on, you're giving me a hard time. Okay. And that's my motion. Do I have a second?
I will second the recommendation. Do I need to read the whole thing again?
No.
Just say a second.
Great. I second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kier,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Paahana,
Aye.
Chair Krushat,
Aye.
approved.
Okay, the next item is the mobile home and special occupancy parks. And I will turn it over to staff.
All right,
I
so,
gotta-
so this is another development code amendment. It revises some of the requirements for developing campgrounds. We did hear the speaker earlier today. And and the language that we put together also separated out RV parks from campgrounds per the Planning Commission direction. We did receive a letter from Hip Camp. It's 4 or 5 pages long. I'm not gonna sit here and read it all. But they did make a suggestion, which we did not include in our recommendation with regards to low-impact camping areas, which is on page 2 of their letter, which has different acreage requirements and density requirements than if it was a full-service campsite. And well, we're looking for the commission direction on this particular issue. If the commission wants to include that, then you can either forward it on to the council with this recommendation in it. In other words, you're gonna trust us to make those changes, or we can come back and with these recommendations in, or you can just say, no, we don't want to do that. So we're looking to the commission's direction on that. Again, I've got the development code section up on the screen if the commission or any member of the public would like to discuss it. And I believe we've got a speaker on this as well. So our official recommendation is that the commission find the development code amendment exempt from CEQA and to adopt the resolution, and then forward to the city for adoption for the development code amendment. But if there are changes that the commission wishes to make per public input, then we'll take your direction as to whether or not to continue this and bring it back, or just forward on to with changes.
If I may, I would like to have more time, and I think public, comments and just kind of getting that whole forum together would be great, and I would like to continue until date certain, or continue for another time.
Okay.
That would be my preference. I would like to hear, he's been here the whole time through all the agenda items. But if we're gonna continue, those comments will definitely be encouraged at those meetings, but I don't know how you want to handle that, Chair.
No. Well, first I would like to make the comment that, and this is just from my personal view, I like the idea that we started separating out the chapters. So we dealt with mobile homes, parks, we deal with campgrounds and define the campgrounds. I'd like that to be a separate.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I agree with Leslie that I think we ought to I'd like to table this, review it a little more, get a little more input, because I had some questions. Under definitions, you reference California Health and Safety Code Division 13, and I didn't have a copy of that, so that's another reason why I'd like the time to go back and review it a little more.
Okay.
And I'll open it up to the rest of my fellow commissioners. If you have-
And my question here, and this is something I want to look at, so tabling is good, is when does this vote on this Bill 620 that they're included in this HIP camp? You're saying it hasn't been,
If
You're right.
it
if it
It hasn't been
passes,
passed.
so I think that's something to do some research on. I mean, I'm all for, separating it into these smaller buckets so that there's more opportunities, but just understanding what
Sure.
this
Sure.
is supposed to mean.
Yeah, absolutely. We can look into what Senate Bill 620 says and does, and the status of it, and likelihood of passing, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Can I ask I've got another question, and just when I was reading through it, we said that the minimum acreage was 10 acres for a mobile home park. Is there a reason why I'm just curious, why was 10 picked over, say, 15, 20, or maybe 5? Or is it just, is that based upon,
That's got it.
if somebody wanted to put
It's-
and the reason why I'm asking, and you can answer, the reason why I'm asking is we have this issue with affordable housing. And if somebody came in and said, I have this great 5-acre lot and I'd like to put a mobile home park on it, which can lead to is a form of affordable housing, why would we stop? Why do we choose 10 acres over 5?
Right now, it's
10 over
it's
20.
currently 5 acres, and the density is 12 per acre,
Yeah.
which allows you to put a large amount of homes on 5 acres. So you could put 60, which is a lot. So we expanded the acreage and lowered the density to give more space per unit.
Yeah. Because what you have right now is a max density of 8 spaces per acre, which is over the 4,000 square feet. No, what I'm saying is, 1 acre is 43,560 square
right.
feet. 8 spaces, if I divide that by 8 spaces, I get around 5,000 and some square feet.
Correct.
But we're saying that
But-
the minimum can be 4,000, so I could have a couple spaces that are 4,000, a space that's.
Yeah, I mean, we
Right.
did that on purpose, so to
Yeah.
get some flexibility in there.
Gotcha,
Also
I
have
understand
to
that,
remember
that's good.
that-
So my next question is why do we, so if somebody comes in and wants to do a mobile home park, and he says, but I only got a 5-acre lot,
Well,
that would
if-
allow him to put,
If these rules pass, then we would say no.
right,
You also have to remember that there are other amenities, parking, clubhouse amenities. So
understand.
those all have to fit into your, so
and
that's
that would
why-
limit what he would do on that 5 acres, that's my point.
Correct.
I mean, if you put the access roads in, a couple amenities, you may only have space for 4.
And that's entirely possible.
Yeah,
So, with the density that was in the prior, in the existing code,
yeah,
the amenities that were required kind of knocked that density down
Okay.
anyway. So,
I'm not saying no to it, I'm just curious as why we selected 10, and I understand what you're saying, I got it.
yeah,
And
and
I know that
that's-
we're tabling this one so that we can do more study,
Sure.
so that's good.
And I think too, this is a public hearing, so, and you do not have to agree with us. You do not have to take our recommendation verbatim.
Okay,
If the commission has different experiences and expertises on a particular subject, you can definitely make suggestions for modifications.
Okay.
That's part of what a public hearing is. So, but this is our recommendation based upon,
understand.
our dealing with the mobile home parks in this particular city.
Okay.
If the commission wants to make modifications to it, then it is what it is. And you're not gonna hurt our feelings.
Okay,
I have a question is, when we talked about the affordable housing and like certain things couldn't be stopped if you wanted to apply it for affordable housing, or if it's for a specific use? Like if you wanted to add the accessory dwelling unit on the property, but say, like we just did the non-conforming, and you have some sort of building that is no longer in the new code, you can't stop the process for the ADU, right? That's what.
Okay, so
Okay,
What's
so
your
how it's
question?
going together, I'm saying, would, for instance, if there was 10 acres and that's what you approved, but someone wanted to do something on 5 acres that was for some sort of affordable housing project, would that be?
Okay, we're talking kind of
Apples and
weird.
Absolutely different.
We're
Yeah.
some. If someone were to come in with some sort of mixed-use development
Mhm.
on 10 acres and put, put a mobile home on part of it, and a park on another part, and apartments on another part, and a commercial center or something, then we would definitely take a look at it. There are other mechanisms besides a CUP to get a mobile home park. For instance, you could do a specific plan. If someone wanted to have a commercial center plus a miniature golf course plus a mobile home park plus an apartment complex, we could do a specific plan for that particular area.
Mhm.
So there are different mechanisms.
Okay,
So
so there's options,
there are options, and these are all purely hypothetical.
yes. Okay.
I agree with tabling it, especially when is SB 620 supposed to be or can be passed? Do we know?
That's something we don't know.
We
right
don't
now.
know.
So it's definitely, I think, something to be considered, especially after the first thing that we talked about on the agenda about the accessibility to different people.
Mhm.
And this would make it, if the hip camp stuff is actually, if that does pass, it would make things a lot more accessible to people. And if we pass it prematurely, or this prematurely, I think we kind of close off a lot of people to being able to have
With
cash flow or equity.
Before we get to public comment, what is the commission's opinion on page 2 with their recommendations for low impact camping areas? Because when we think of camping areas, we think of
Yeah.
water, sewer, cooking facilities, all those kinds of things. Their definition of low impact has none of those amenities.
Well,
That's
yes.
that's the point of that type of style of camping. So I think it should be considered within our city limits. What do those areas look like, and how would we like to put a policy on it?
I
Well,
think
that we could include something like this into the
Yes,
proposed development.
I believe that that's something
but
to
that,
explore.
I'm with Leslie. That should be a separate. That's a regulation that covers campgrounds in particular.
Yeah, so we could
So we
do
could cover
like
both.
full
We could
campgrounds.
rate the campgrounds, call them what they are,
Mhm.
and have something that defines those and the requirements for those. I mean, so I don't know if we've started on that, and we,
These recommendations were not included in this draft.
no, I understand, because this draft I see is only mobile home and special occupancy parks, and I'm still unclear on what is a special occupancy park. Is that just RVs?
It's RVs and campgrounds.
RVs and campgrounds. Yeah, that's what I was wanting to do. I wanted to pull out a
Like,
separate.
it's still a
separate
developed
category, yeah.
situation. Maybe it's not paved and it has campground and you have a picnic table next to it, and that's like a slot or or a set. This particular one is more or less saying paved. So I think we have an unexplored entire option off the table right now that I think should or could be included.
Okay, so the direction, from what I'm hearing from the commission, you want RV parks, campgrounds. Is that, did you find something?
No, I thought we would cover, I was under the understanding, because I'm reading through your proposed regulation, and I see recreational vehicles.
Well, it's inside of the mobile home park. There is a section in there that talks about RVs, and then under you're correct,
Yeah,
Krusha, that under specialized park, that talks about more or less like RV, not staying more than 30 days, and
Got
a
it.
set of rules like that, yeah.
but
So
it
what's
doesn't,
not,
but it doesn't really specifically address,
if you could put a tent there,
yeah, I mean, it doesn't,
more
doesn't.
or less, you're correct. It's not really specifying that style.
And I thought we were going to have a separate, I mean, chapter 19.xxx that covers campgrounds.
No, we can develop that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
I would think that would be the cleaner and simpler way to go.
So
We have-
the code under section 19.124.060,
Yeah,
development standards, special occupancy parks. So it does have the numbering's a little off, but number 1 is recreational vehicle parks,
right,
and then number 2 is campgrounds, which is on page 9.
page 9.
So page 76 of your packet.
And that's more or less like a developed campsite. I think we want to explore the options of more nature-filled style.
Primitive, we cover primitive,
Yes.
we cover low-impact camping areas, we cover, I'm looking at a,
If that's the desire and the want, like, if we get ahead of it as a city with those expectations, I think it could be something great, as long, but it's not included in much.
And this national park gets full extremely quick. People
Yeah.
want that same experience without having to go into the national
And-
park, and we have a bunch of great land to actually be able to do that here.
And that ties into the inclusiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I think
And
that.
here's campgrounds here.
Mhm.
Where's campground? On table 124.60.
Yeah, page 19, 124-9 of the,
I'm looking at the finalized, this was your finalized, what you
There-
proposed.
That's the current code.
Oh, that's the current code.
Yeah. So the
Okay.
one, the draft code has all the red lines.
Okay.
I've been to some of these type of hip camp ones in the county, and I mean, I think that their recommendation is a good starting point. I think definitely the waste and the trash is something to be dealt with.
Yep.
In terms of, I've done an event, a wedding that someone put on one of these campgrounds, and, you're supposed to take everything with you, but that doesn't necessarily happen, right? So I think
maintenance is always gonna be an
The-
issue.
Yeah.
yes, insecurity of people coming, if it's not a gated space, which it is part of the allure to it, right, having it but that seems to be the setbacks in terms of that property owner that did put it on hip camp, and they went ahead and put in a composting toilet. They have to lock it up because then it's being broken into. So there are some of those issues, I think, that aren't on this recommendation that I would think we'd want to cover.
And if you have, if we're gonna table this, some written recommendations from you
Okay.
guys.
If-
Before the next one, we'll see what we can do about incorporating.
All
it.
right.
Let me ask my fellow commissioners, do we have a consensus that we'd like to separate the mobile home and RV from a separate chapter that just covers campgrounds?
So as Diane pointed out, it is in the rewritten code in red.
Yeah.
But you're talking about not calling it a campground, calling it something else, because she has it broken down.
But we don't
No,
have.
no, we don't have a
low
separate-
impact.
I think we can discuss those things in more detail with a separate chapter and category that covers campgrounds, separate from mobile home parks.
I
Yeah,
don't know
that's
how
what-
I'm missing this, but that's clearly what's on the screen right now.
No, that covers campgrounds and
And it's separate from. the
everything that we were
special-
talking about, yeah, I got that, but that's very basic stuff, and I think there's more clarity we want to put into.
Are you saying more extensive?
Yeah, more extensive on describing what you can do with the campgrounds, and I guess I would say delineate better definitions of this is what a primitive campground is. This is what a campground that can handle, that has restroom facilities, and this is what a campground has that's, let's use the term, low-impact camping area. That's what I'm saying. Do I have consensus on that, or do we just
Well,
want
would
to
a
put it all in
campground,
one?
meaning like I have a bunch of log cabins and you get to camp there, is that different than primitive, like you want it that specific?
Well, it would describe.
Or
it
is
would-
that a
it would
specialized
describe-
park?
It would describe, yeah, the campgrounds.
Primitive, like no water, no power.
Yeah, well, that would be a primitive campground. They're saying, and whatever you packed in, you have to pack out. You would take care of your own personal waste, too. That's what, mostly is what a primitive campground, unless we want to deal with it different if it's going to be within city limits. That's what I'm saying.
So all that, Keith, you got it?
We're taking, we're taking as furious.
I'm saying,
notes
do
as
I have a
fast as we can
consensus
write
on
them.
that? I mean, I understand what Leslie was saying about, yeah, well, it's covered here, and I read it, and I see what I consider the basic descriptions, but I think we're going to have to be more
Detailed in the
detailed,
expectations
yes, thank
per
you.
the
We're
different
going to have to be
category
more
of camping.
detailed.
And we can put in there, like, for lack of a better term, standards for operation or something like that. If you want, it shall be kept clean at all times, maintained, have security, something.
Right, because if you just have like 5 acres in the middle over there and it's allowable use in that area, and I just have people have 52 tents out there and it doesn't matter because
Well-
it's primitive, like, I think that's the goal, is to try to establish. what
Well,
type
and-
of
and
policies we
May,
want.
and I'm just brainstorming here, would there be a threshold to say, and I'm making this up, that the primitive campgrounds are
Not allowed?
one, well, we could say that.
Yeah, I know, we could.
We could say, and I'm just making this up as a scenario, 1 to 10 acres you can do a primitive campground, but anything over that, you have to have a more intense campground or something like that. I don't know.
And we also have to determine where are we gonna allow this? I mean,
And
that's
that
gonna be
is-
the zoning issue. Are you gonna
that-
allow it in rural living?
Are you gonna
Right.
allow it only on vacant lots? Are you gonna allow people to have campgrounds in their backyards?
Well, see, that's what I'm saying, is no, we don't wanna have people have campgrounds or running campgrounds in their backyards. Inside residential areas. I don't, again, yeah, all things to be discussed that I think are gonna take,
I
I'm
think
not.
the community input's gonna be fantastic on this, where
Yeah.
we kind of like see, maybe we're not thinking of it right now, maybe we're not considering some of these things, and I just, maybe even a public comment as soon as we wrap.
There's gonna be people that absolutely do not want
Appreciate the
campgrounds.
patience.
I mean, I've
Absolutely.
already heard that. They
No,
say,
absolutely.
I do not want campgrounds inside 29 Palms. We're gonna deal with that issue. But I also agree that, if we're gonna promote tourism and we're gonna promote all the positive things, we've gotta make an allowance. This is and I'm speaking.
Well,
for-
yeah, and so
Yeah.
to your point, I mean,
Yeah,
we have rural living and get rural estate, and with our latest.
I just threw that out as, I don't know. Where would you put campgrounds? Where would you put a permanent campground within?
Where would you put a commercial campground?
Yeah, where would I put a commercial?
Well, I mean, if you say it's a commercial campground,
Yeah.
it begs the question, it should be in a commercial zone,
Yeah,
but realistically.
you don't want a campground in the middle of,
You don't want a campground
the
in the
middle of downtown.
Right.
All right, I gotcha. So, I'm just saying, I think needs to be a little more
A little
thought
more
in-
fleshing out.
Yeah, fleshing
Okay.
out.
And we can definitely table this per the commission's direction and if you want to set it up for a date certain, that'll give us a deadline to
Okay.
get things done. Otherwise, it might just float out there forever.
Okay.
But we do have a public
Yes.
speaker I don't want to ignore.
No, I don't. And I want to open it up to public comment, but I also want to ask you, do you have enough
I think so.
guidance? Okay.
I think, Diane, what do you think? We have enough direction?
Good answer, good answer.
Then I will go ahead and open to public comment.
Well, I guess I'm going to address all 3 things that came up. Is this timed as well? Is this a 3-minute thing? Okay, then let's keep it to 1. So I think something that's missing from this as well is the alt structure designation. San Bernardino County has a path through the CUP. An alt structure could be a single trailer on your property. It could be a creatively designed yurt, things that you would find in a national park that don't meet building codes, don't meet building standards, but can be rented. They have a pretty clear, defined path. It's on their website. And being in San Bernardino County, I'm not saying this should be inside the city limits, like in downtown, but in these rural areas that are within the city limits, I do feel that there's an opportunity for alt structures, creative and unique buildings. So if there's any needed clarification on that, I'm happy to speak about that now.
When you say it doesn't meet building codes, I think you're meaning building codes for commercial or residential structures.
Exactly. Well, like when you go and you stay at a yurt in the national forest, right? That yurt does not meet a residential standard of building code, right? It doesn't have insulation. It doesn't meet Title 24 requirements. There's no foundation, yada, yada. I'm not saying that there's just like a carte blanche thing, but I think there should be some creative discussion about ways in which we can think creatively about development when it comes to these kinds of things. So.
Yes, but I would, what you just brought up, and I know we're not supposed to discuss things that aren't on the, but it kind of is. Yeah, it's just general. I see, I would look at a yurt as being part of falling under that campground type discussion.
Right.
Because that's kind of glamping.
For
And,
sure, but
yeah.
what would not fall under that would absolutely be
Yeah.
like a trailer, a school
Now you're
bus,
talking about, but a
an
person who draws a
airplane,
trailer on a
things
piece of
these
property.
nature. Yeah.
Well, and if
And
this
we're also
were-
going to be getting into what tiny houses eventually.
Well, we're talking non-residential
Right.
structures here.
Okay.
So, We have, over the years, we've had a lot of, shall we say, creative ideas as far as campgrounds and types of hotels, including a caboose, a boat,
Yeah, you just said airplane.
airplane, seriously. And they're obviously not, they're not mentioned in the code because no one has brought it up to us before, up until very recently. And in the past, when it was brought up to the city as staff, we go, well, no. But that's up to the commission to whether or not we wanted to entertain the idea of a caboose, a plane, a boat, a yurt, or whatever else as part of the campground.
And I just think it's where would we put that? I mean, where do we allow something like that? I think there's some advantages to that. I mean, I like the fact that, we're kind of a little bit of an eclectic community, and that we can have something like that draws tourism. But nobody's gonna want that in the middle of downtown or near a residential area, a high-density residential area. So, again, something to be defined and addressed.
So in our land use tables that we've already approved, that you've already approved, campgrounds are allowed in rural living, they're allowed in tourist commercial, and then public, the public zoning. Those are the 3 zoning designations where they're allowed.
Commercial general?
No, a tourist commercial.
Tourist commercial.
And then, public. When public is, those campgrounds would have to be, operated by the city. Anything on public land would have to be operated by the city. But, so it's rural living and, tourist commercial. Those are the 2 zones where you could have a campground.
We're still
So-
in public comment.
So RS
Yeah.
would not be allowed,
Okay.
as it's written today.
Yeah, so they wouldn't be allowed in RS, they wouldn't be allowed downtown.
Okay, got it. Any further comments?
A last thing about downtown campgrounds. I know you said it's not allowed. I would reference El Cosmico in Marfa, Texas. That is a very excellent example of one that is downtown. That's a creative use thing that is world-renowned. People come from all over the world to stay at this thing. And it's a very good hybrid between a small town downtown and a campground in the middle. So it's a really good reference of a very successful, functional, elite product. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Richard, if you don't mind, would you fill out a comment card that's sitting on the table out there, and then just
Okay.
hand it to me, or you can leave it on the table and I can grab it.
For sure.
If I have no other public comments, I'm going to close public comment. Bring it back up to staff, and I think we pretty much milked this one.
Yes.
You've got the guidance, and
So
we can,
are we gonna table it to, a date certain, or are we just gonna say to a future meeting?
what date would, how much time do you need? What do you need?
My suggestion is we can't do this in 2 weeks.
Right.
And I would suggest we can't bring this back in October, so.
Can you do something like mobile homes and RV parks, cover that one, and then pick up campgrounds later? Would you like to have them both ready to go?
My preference is just to have them all
Okay.
heard at
fine.
once, but what we can do is we can put it to a date certain, and if the commission feels it's not ready, you can always continue it again.
Okay,
So,
November 7th.
you pick the date,
I'm looking at November the 7th.
okay?
And then when would you like any emailed,
Just email it to me.
I mean, by what date?
Oh, as soon as possible. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, because we have to get we try to get the commission packets put together a week ahead of time at least.
Okay.
But if you email me on 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, I can't incorporate that into
Right.
Okay.
the staff report. So
And still, I would like to get, like, if we got something that's 154 pages, and we get it on a Thursday, I'd like it for the next,
yeah. Well, and I'm gonna say this again, I mean, just because we have a recommendation doesn't mean you have to follow it.
Okay.
If the commission feels like it needs more time, like on this particular subject, you're more than welcome to continue it unless we have some sort of urgency.
Is there time to plan like a community gathering to talk about this, to get community input?
I'll run that up to Frank and see what
Okay.
he has to say.
Perfect.
That would probably be good at like a study session, you know what I mean, instead of creating another meeting.
Whatever works. I just want the public in here telling me all the stuff they want,
Study
so.
session would give people an opportunity.
I like having a
Yeah.
draft, if we had a draft, draft chapter of the development code that we put out to the community and say we're commenting on that, would that suffice?
I would like to hear from the public, so whatever.
I mean,
I
we
don't-
do advertise these meetings.
Yeah.
Would it be
Like a-
interesting? Go ahead.
Like a workshop. I
Yeah.
think that you help check the boxes of making sure that we heard from everyone. You know, not everybody can make meetings or is aware of the internet, or, you know what I mean? If we're gonna move with this whole thing that we just approved, I think we make the time, or we make an option, or we can study session it if we have time. I know we have a lot on our plate, and we have the homeless committee, and so that's just my opinion. I'm not the leader of the boss of everything, but I'm just saying that's.
I kind of agree with that, having that accessibility, making it more accessible, but.
If the commission thinks that 6 weeks is too soon, because right now we're at September 19th, and if we don't think we can get it done by October, that'll put it November the 7th, but if we want more community outreach, that'll be pushing it back to December.
I think I like
Or
this.
January.
I like the 7th, and if that means including like a study session in October, I don't know how loaded it is, but if it's too.
It's pretty loaded.
Between here and there, we're
I'm,
gonna allow
I'm
it.
looking at my personal schedule is I've got 2 exercises coming up at that time. Yes.
Yeah, I'll be tattooing out of state multiple times in October.
Yeah,
Start getting into Christmas and things.
yeah, because if we don't have a quorum, we don't have a meeting. Just putting it out there. We're down one commissioner for at least, I would say at least 2 months.
2 months?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
That's my
are we
guess. I
trying to
don't know for
figure out-
certain, but probably 2 months.
Are we trying to figure out for a study session? Is that what, like, is?
I think the idea is that, yes, we want the public to, you know, engage and have these opportunities to tell us their opinion about these certain things that we're about to create a policy for. You know, instead of having that as an afterthought afterwards, and then people trying to be like, wait, city council at the last second, we didn't consider this. So the goal is to have that, but it's just how can we have that? And does that mean a whole separate meeting? Is there staff available to accommodate such a meeting? Or can we throw it on a study session as we have planning, you know, and advertise and let them know, like, hey, come here and tell us about what you think about these things. And, you know, but sometimes when you only get 3 minutes, it's not the same effect. So I don't know, it's just very hard, but I get the
Well,
desire.
here's my suggestion then. Why don't we tentatively put it on for November the 7th, and if we feel like we're not ready, then we can just continue it to another date certain.
Well, yeah, but on the 7th, and it may not be one that we vote on. It may be like we have a study session amongst us, taking a look at the first draft
Sure.
before.
Like
where
it,
it's-
I like that
yeah.
idea.
And then we take a look at the first draft, not to vote on, not to put in the development or recommend adoption in the development code, but just for a kind of like a study session on site. We look at the first draft.
Brainstorm.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that November the 7th, we're gonna continue this with no obligation to make a motion.
Right.
Okay, are you continuing it as a public hearing or as a study session?
Well, we need to keep it open to the public, so,
It's a public,
Well, it can be a
well, study
session
sessions
on its
are
own.
open to the public, yeah.
well, but
But we've already advertised it as a public hearing.
we've already
Yeah,
advertised
yeah.
this as a public
So
hearing.
it has to stay as a
So-
public hearing, okay.
So yes, we have to keep it as a public hearing, otherwise we're gonna have to pick out 2 dates.
Fine.
One for the study session, one for another
Okay,
public hearing.
public hearing on the 7th.
And if you don't make a decision, you don't have to.
Public hearing on its own, with, you know,
And, right,
okay,
and you're not obligated to approve it or disapprove it or whatever.
right.
So November 7th.
All right, next item, downtown specific.
Oh, we need to vote on that.
Pardon?
Do we need to vote on that?
We don't, not if everybody agreed to table it.
You have to make a motion,
been tabled.
you have to make a motion to continue it
Oh.
to the meeting of November 7th.
Then I make a motion that we table this event for later for further discussion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Carrick?
Aye.
I turned it off. Commissioner Garcia?
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana?
I
And Chair Kruschat?
Aye.
just
Thank
didn't
you.
agree with the way the motion was said, but it's fine. It was for November 7th. I said aye. Let's move on.
Didn't we say the motion?
He said the motion, we already did it, I'm moving on. He just left out the actual date. That's fine.
Oh, I'll let them set the date.
Yeah,
Okay, November 7th.
yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
Now can I move on to downtown specific plan allowable land use?
Yes.
Thank you. There we go.
Okay, so downtown specific plan allowable land uses. What
Pull
we
that up.
have done is taken the list of allowable uses that the commission voted on and went to the city council and put that same list into the downtown specific plan. The downtown specific plan uses slightly different language and it's more general in some areas, more specific in other areas, more particular in other areas. And in addition, it doesn't reflect the latest housing element changes that were done previously with the rest of the development code. So what we did is we went through the exercise of itemizing each allowable land use and translating that into the zones of the downtown specific plan. If the commission desires, here is the specific plan allowable land uses as they exist, with certain notations of things that needed to be modified anyway here in blue. But what we did is we took that list, compared it to the list of allowable uses of the rest of the development code, and completed the matrix. So what we've done, there is a section of the development code with regards to specific plans, and we're putting this into that particular section of the development code. So it's a development code amendment, not a specific plan amendment. So that there's some legal planning nuances there, but this would be the governing document as to what would be allowed and not allowed in the downtown specific plan in the various zones. So we recommend, like all the other ones, that the Planning Commission find the project exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and for the recommendation to the City Council,
That's the mobile home one.
the Council, for adoption.
Did it
Okay.
cover the,
Can we pull that back up?
Which one? This one?
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's what we're putting forward. I just wanted to,
Yeah, this is what we're putting forward. I do have the ordinance as it's
yeah,
listed.
I've got that.
And it gets really messy because it's a lot of red line strikeouts.
Right.
I've got the Excel spreadsheet that's more clean, but it's
And X
exactly the same.
still means what I think it means?
X means it's not allowed.
Not allowed, yeah.
did it cover the did anything change with the parking?
No.
No.
I did not change anything with regards to the parking or other development standards.
Okay.
So this is just putting it in the map,
This is just,
essentially.
yeah, it's filling out the matrix, one of my professional bugaboos is inconsistent language and land uses. Because I don't want to have someone say, hey, I've got a daycare / large, which is up to, I'm making stuff up now, which means I can have 8 kids that I can take care of, but you have a large family daycare, which means you can only have 6. You know, that kind of, you get into that silly discussion, and it's a customer service issue. Hopefully it makes life easier for all of us. But again, this is our recommendation for the uses and for the types of permits that would be allowed, or under what process we would process these uses. And again, if the commission, we recommend that this is ready to go, but the commission can definitely make changes to it or request further study.
Okay. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me that I had an issue with, but I'm going to open this up to the other commissioners if they have questions for you.
No questions.
No.
No questions.
Wow.
Wow.
It's
Then
not
I'll,
because I'm tuckered out.
It's not because you tuck it out?
It's not because I'm tuckered out.
then I'll open it up for public comment. Any comments from the public? No? Then I close public comments and bring it back up to staff.
I appreciate the way that you explained that it's basically like we're just evening it out amongst all of our codes. and that it supersedes
Yeah.
in the downtown space.
Right, and ideally, and you may have seen this in other jurisdiction, like a gigantic matrix of all the allowed uses and all the zones, and you can, hey, where can I do blah, and you can
Along.
follow
Yeah.
the matrix and it'll let you know, or you can say, what can I do in my neighborhood, and
Mhm.
you have consistent language on a big spreadsheet.
Yep.
In
I
one
like it.
location.
Okay. If I have no more questions, do I have a motion and a second?
I'll motion that we,
Let me bring it up.
Bring it up. yeah.
no, it's, that we find this project exempt from CEQA and adopt the resolution forwarding the recommendation to City Council for approval of the Development Code Amendment for downtown specific plan allowable land uses.
I have a motion. Do I have the second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kier,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Palhana,
Aye.
and Chair Cruciat.
Aye.
Approved.
Discussion of potential action items. I see none. Community Development Director updates.
Okay, so some of these kind of evolved here and, with recent developments. We have had some inquiries on alternative driveway and parking services already, based upon the parking regulations. So, we're internally trying to figure out how to present those to you guys in what process we're gonna do that, but we are starting to see some of those. So I would advise we may be seeing quite a few of those over time. What we're getting complaints on is, pavement is expensive, and I just wanna, one of the things we hear all the time is, all I want to do is open this little shop, and you're making me pave all this sort of discussion. So, you may be seeing a lot of those, and we're gonna start presenting these to you, and we're gonna get feedback from the commission as to what would be acceptable and what wouldn't be. The calendar, I wanted to bring it up to the commission that we're getting into the holiday season. We're on September 19th. We have our next two scheduled commissions are the 10th and the 17th. And I'm sorry, the 3rd and the 17th, I'm so sorry. And the 7th and the 21st of November. And this is just purely if we go by the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays. And then the 5th and 19th of December.
I do not think you're going to get everybody on the 21st.
Well, that was why we're having a discussion.
Okay.
So,
I'm just putting that out there. 'Cause
and this is why we're having a discussion. So, if the commission wants to cancel that meeting, we certainly can, because it's a holiday week. It's perfectly understandable. Same thing, excuse me, and I'm bringing up for December as well. You have the 5th and the 19th. So, does the commission want to meet on the 19th, or we just want to keep it to the 5th? December.
I'm flexible, so I don't, whatever best suits the schedule.
Do you think we're gonna have enough?
Well, that's
work
what he's trying
deal
to figure
with
out.
On the,
Well, we can always bring more development code amendments up. But I'm looking for a feeling from the commission as to whether or not you want to meet on the 19th
it's
of
just,
December.
the 19th, the 21st of November and the 19th, for me, is gonna be, because that's definitely holiday weeks that I usually am away from the area.
And that's fine.
And
This
and
is
that's
why-
all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fine.
No,
This is why
that's
we're
great,
having a
because that
discussion.
allows us to know
Yeah.
if others won't be here, if we won't have a quorum.
Yeah, so my concern is with this 2-month,
No, well, I don't know for certain, but that's my guess.
and partially because I have something that I have to do with surgery, and I'm trying to figure out when, and I'm looking at November, and so potentially if I kind of have, we're canceling this or whatever, maybe I can kind of try and schedule it around when we don't have it, especially if he's gone for 2
Right.
months. So
So if well,
So
right,
I would
and
be-
there's already some discussion earlier tonight about your availability in October.
I'm
That was in regards to an additional meeting.
You'll be available to
Yeah,
discuss.
I will be available for the actual
For the
commission
3rd to
meetings.
17th.
Yes,
So we're
just
still
not,
good for the 3rd and
yeah,
17th.
Still good for
just
yeah,
not for
October's
additional
still good.
meetings would be a little more difficult.
Okay. Let's talk November. So the 21st, we're canceling.
Yeah.
So what's the first,
The November 7th, we're still
November
gonna have.
7th, we're still
November
having.
21st, we will not.
December 5th?
December
Yes.
5th and 19th. December 5th, I'm hearing that's a yes.
19th.
It's up to the
Well, that's
commission.
just before, okay, because Christmas, yeah.
I'm pretty open, so whatever
make the 19th.
works best for everyone.
Go ahead and leave it open, yeah.
Well,
I
as
don't
long
have
as we have
anything
3,
into
we
now.
can have a meeting.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Okay, so so the December the 19th is still a go.
19th is still a go.
Okay.
if we have,
If we have, we'll try not to, since we know we're gonna have 2 absences, we'll,
Yeah.
The city's
Try not to have
closed
anything too controversial.
typically.
When does,
Yeah, I guess I'm just, it's hard to know exactly until I figure out what the surgeon, like, I have to figure out, obviously, when they can take me too. But I'm trying to look at it for November when we wouldn't have a meeting around that time, because I'll need a couple of weeks. Whereas if he was out, I was just trying to make sure I'm covering all the bases there.
uh,
so 7th,
we don't know know the details
That's what I'm
of the
saying, so
medical
I'm-
issue, but
But potentially, I could miss something, so I'm just looking at
just let us know. And
in November, potentially.
Okay. So, just putting it out there. So the homeless committee, we're loading up these October the 3rd with a lot of stuff, including a revision to the VHR ordinance.
another revision?
Well, we're formalizing all of the study sessions that we've had previously. We're gonna make the recommendations to the
Nice.
VHR.
I
Okay.
thought we did that.
We did not do that yet.
In May of 2021,
I'm talking about all the.
Since then, since after your
Since
meetings.
this year, you've had
since-
study sessions on the VHR development code. And now we're gonna bring that up on October the 3rd, at least we're intending to.
Nice, okay.
Okay, so, we don't see, is that confirmed? So I'm gonna suggest and I'll confirm with the other 2 members, I've confirmed with one, that October the 17th may be a better day for the homeless committee. Is that
Push it
acceptable?
out, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put the homeless committee on the 17th, and then we'll let Andrea Keller know. Okay. New building. I think if the commission desires, we're in the midst of moving. If the commission would like to have a sneak peek.
All
I
right,
can-
I'll carry a box over for you.
You can carry a box over if you want to. If not, that's okay too.
I'll do it.
So if you would like to, we can head over there just for a few minutes and have you guys take a look around. If not, we can always do it next time, or you can just come over on your own time.
I think we'll leave it to each individual person.
It's probably very messy anyway. It's full of boxes and all that stuff, so
Okay, you want to get it all set up for us and then we'll come?
that's probably a good idea. I would just want to extend the offer.
I'll still help with the box.
If you want to
I
help with
won't
the
look.
boxes.
I have a question on the alternative parking. Is that mainly for like business, retail, commercial?
Well, that's
Is that
something
everything across the
that's,
board?
exactly. It's for retail, commercial stuff. And
Residential too?
And some
Okay.
residential as well, because we've had, because pavement is
Yeah, yeah.
expensive,
Mhm.
and
Just because I know in Yucca recently, one of the small businesses went up they basically were supposed to, had to widen the road or whatever it was. And they just had a whole hearing upon that of what they're going to potentially allow for a smaller business. And I don't know. There's a lot of that happening in Yucca too right now. I was wondering if that was had any similar crossover.
I would say it's probably a related issue, but not the same.
Okay.
Our friends in Yucca deal with a lot of the same issues we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got you know, do I really have to pave this, and
Mm-hmm.
what else can I do besides pavement and that kind of thing. So we'll look for some, we'll start bringing some forward to you here in the next
Okay.
commission or two, and we'll see where it goes.
Anything else?
That's it.
Then I am going ahead, there's no study session.